Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Friesen. I'm the Vice President of Programs and Partnerships with Philanthropy Southeast, and I want to welcome you to this webinar, Hurricane Ian, Responding to a Catastrophic Storm. This webinar is hosted by Philanthropy Southeast in partnership with the Center for Disaster Philanthropy and the Florida Philanthropic Network. We are grateful for the partnership that we have with these two extraordinary organizations. And my role here today is to just welcome you, to thank you for being here, to thank you for your interest and for your willingness to be supportive of these communities that have been impacted. I am going to turn things over to Sally Ray, who is the Director of Domestic Funds for the Center for Disaster Philanthropy. Sally.
Thank you, Tiffany. I just wanted to provide a few reminders before we get started. You can submit your questions anytime using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer them at the end of the panel presentation. And if you're on Twitter, please use hashtag CDP4Recovery, that's CDP, the number 4 recovery, to share and join the discussion. And don't forget to follow all of us, CDP at Funds for Disaster, Philanthropy Southeast at Philanthropy SE, and Florida Philanthropic Network at FL Philanthropy. And finally, we're recording this webinar. It will be available on both Philanthropy Southeast and CDP's websites and the YouTube channel shortly after the webinar is complete. Live captioning is available now via Zoom. Click on closed caption /live transcript to access it, and more accurate captions will be available in the recording. As we begin the webinar, CDP acknowledges that we are working from the stolen lands of the many original peoples. We recognize that Indigenous peoples have been displaced and disenfranchised from their land by the socioeconomic and cultural disaster of colonialism, as well as disasters. We acknowledge that the U.S. was founded. When the U.S. was founded, there were exclusions and erasures of Indigenous knowledge about how to appropriately care for these lands, causing environmental destruction and degradation, which has had a significant impact on disaster risk and on communities. We are committed to dismantling the ongoing legacies, systems, and structures of settler colonialism and white supremacy. We commit ourselves to understand where and how wealth accumulation has harmed people and the earth itself, and the complexities of philanthropy is connected to that truth. Despite centuries of theft, violence, and murder, this is still and always will be Indigenous land. Please join us and acknowledge the original peoples and their elders, past and present, as well as future generations. And now it's my pleasure to turn the microphone over to Janine Lee.
Thank you so much, Sally. Good afternoon and welcome again to the webinar, Hurricane Ian, Responding to a Catastrophic Storm. My name is Janine Lee. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm the president and CEO of Philanthropy Southeast. We are a philanthropic serving organization serving 11 southeastern states, serving philanthropic organizations all across those 11 southeastern states and the U.S. Virgin Islands. I've actually been at Philanthropy Southeast for 12 years, but I've been serving in the nonprofit and philanthropic world for about 30 plus years. I started my career at the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation based in Kansas City, where I spent 15 years, and moved to the South in 2005 to join the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation as just two examples of where I've had my service. So as we get started, one of the things that I want to do is just kind of go over some of the goals of the webinar today with you. By the end of this webinar, our hope is that you as funders will have an overview of the flooding and damage of Hurricane Ian, that you'll understand how to best support community organizations working on the ground, and that you'll also have the opportunity to learn about the unique needs of different populations in disaster recovery. The images of Hurricane Ian making landfall in Cuba, in Florida, and the Carolinas have gripped many of us over the past several days. The uncertainty of the path and the massive destruction has been, to say the least, anxiety producing for residents and for those outside of the impacted areas. Florida in particular, as we all know, has been damaged in ways that we've just not seen historically. The full scope of the devastation is still unfolding. The damage assessments are still ongoing. However, catastrophic storm surge, high winds, and up to 20 inches of rain in some areas has flooded homes, has knocked out power for thousands, has damaged critical infrastructure. The death toll, while it continues to fluctuate, tragically, the hurricane has killed at least 109 people, 102 of those people in Florida, 4 in North Carolina, 3 in Cuba. If I could just ask all of us to take just a moment of silence for all of those affected in these communities across our region. Thank you. Now it's my honor to introduce our very special guest, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation and the information that they're going to share with us. So I'm going to start with Sally Ray. Sally brings nearly 30 years of experience working in the nonprofit world and a passion for community and social service to her current role as Director of Domestic Funds and previously as Director of Strategic Initiatives and the Director of Hurricane Harvey Recovery Fund. In her current role with CDP, Sally oversees grant making for several domestic disaster funds, including the CDP Atlantic Hurricane Season Fund, the CDP California Wildfires Recovery Fund, the CDP Colorado Wildfires Recovery Fund, the CDP Disaster Recovery Fund, and the U.S. grant making for CDP COVID-19 Response Fund. We want to thank Sally for being with us today. Marcus Coleman serves as the Director for the Department of Homeland Security's Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. Originally from Tucson, Arizona, Marcus has served at the intersection of building public-private partnerships with faith-based and nonprofit organizations for more than 15 years. Marcus began his career at FEMA in 2010, where he was a program manager for the Individual and Community Preparedness Division. Thank you, Marcus, for joining us. And Roxy Jurdy, who's no stranger to Philanthropy Southeast. She's a proud former trustee on our board at Philanthropy Southeast. We're excited, Roxy, that you're able to join us today and thankful that you are. Roxy has served as president and CEO of the Community Foundation of Sarasota County since March of 2011. Roxy works closely with Community Foundation donors, along with area nonprofits, businesses, and foundations to solve important issues affecting our community, always searching for answers that impact multiple generations through shared values. Under her leadership, the Community Foundation has inspired philanthropy across the region through the Giving Partner, as well as the Giving Challenge, which has raised more than $75 million for local causes. So I just want to say welcome to each of you and thank you for taking the time to share your experiences and your expertise with us today. So Roxy, I think I want to start with you. And I have kind of a series of questions. But first, you live, Roxy, in Sarasota County. I'm so glad that you're safe. It's so good to see you. But tell me what you're seeing in your own community, in your own neighborhood. Do you have power and water? What are you seeing on the ground? And what are some of the most important needs?
I got out of Zoom practice, didn't I? I was on mute, so forgive me there. It's great to see you, and thank you for all that are attending this today. First of all, I do live in Sarasota County, and personally, we had power. We were very blessed. I haven't had internet since Wednesday and still don't, but we were impacted in multiple ways as a community. And I think it might help for those that aren't from Florida. Southwest Florida was particularly hit from Naples, Collier County, the southern part of Southwest Florida, up through Manatee County, almost in the Tampa region. Hardest hit with landfall with Ian was Fort Myers and Lee County. However, once the storm surge, the winds had died, that rain and the flooding dramatically impacted the southern part of our county, Charlotte County, and moving inland through Orlando and the east coast of Florida. So while the wind and the just awful catastrophic, what we're seeing in the Fort Myers area, but when you come to our community, we are still flooded. So we have whole communities that you can't even get to because homes are flooded. So homes are gone, businesses are gone, flooding, 100-year trees that are humongous are uprooted. There's, again, we have colleagues, first and foremost, we were worried about our staff. I have one colleague who has been flooded. She's looking for temporary housing. We still have colleagues that don't have power in our county, and we weren't even the hardest hit. So it's just sharing with you how dramatic this is and impacting our daily lives. So we focused on our team first and foremost, and then the immediate needs we're seeing on relief and response have been really tremendous from throughout the country. We're seeing food, water, shelter, tarps, just basic supplies are what people are needing here, and gas. The gas stations were out of gas. You don't even think about that was really an issue. And childcare now. Our schools are closed. We're hoping some of our schools in our county may open early next week, but the whole district won't be opening. So childcare has been an issue. And we can't forget about medical needs. Our hospital is overflowing because hospitals were closed. We are hearing helicopters every few minutes bringing people to our hospitals, as well as those that often are on fixed incomes with oxygen, dialysis machines. That has really, and tragically, people who died, many, they didn't have power for the machines that were instrumental for their being able to live. So those are all real immediate challenges. So that is what we are seeing, a lot of response. What we're going to be doing longer term, and I know we'll address this later, is we're going to focus on recovery. So I'm glad we can really work with people and talk through what immediate relief and response is, and then moving on to intermediate and long-term recovery.
My goodness. Well, thank you for that, Roxy. And I mean, it just hit me when you said all of that. It's just devastating. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for the generosity of the philanthropic leaders across our region, certainly across the country. I know that we have leaders on the call today, well over 200, almost 300 folks that I think registered that are on this call and that are anxious to hear from you and the others. So I appreciate it very much. Sally, I want to ask you a similar question. CDPs, grantees, and partners are spread across many of the impacted communities. What are you hearing from them about their needs and issues on the ground?
Sure. Thank you, Janine. Our partners on the ground are still in early relief and response mode. They're working alongside government partners to address immediate needs, as Roxy indicated, feeding, sheltering, providing access to communications, providing tarps for houses that were damaged. In some of the most devastated areas, unfortunately, search and rescue is still happening. But in other places where it's feasible, cleanup has started. They're helping with debris removal and starting to do damage assessment, and may even be starting to muck and gut houses, as we call it, when they remove drywall and start to clean out the flooding and other things that have happened there. We always encourage donors to consider cash donations in this situation. Right now, especially, we don't want them to send stuff. Unless, there's no place to store it right now, manage it, distribute it, that sort of thing. Or if you do want to donate stuff, make sure you're working with a nonprofit partner there that's experienced and set up to accept it and manage it. During this time, we really want to encourage our partners to use funding, to use funding to identify the needs, to help partners, let them use the funding more flexibly and identify needs and tell you what they need, and trust them to do what's best. Because right now we're in that period of time where it's relief and response, and it's a little chaotic, and there's a lot of emergency needs that are being addressed, and so allowing some flexibility with funding, if you're funding at this point, would be what we would suggest.
So thank you for that. Allowing for that flexibility of funding sounds really important right now for folks who are affected. Marcus, let's move to you. FEMA has had a very, very busy year. What issues are you seeing across affected areas, and what has the government response been to date?
Appreciate your question. And I actually want to do something to give some of your funders and some of the audience some context. So FEMA is supporting a number of open disasters, and we know that access to information is critically important, and that, as Sally and our partners from Center for Disaster Philanthropy know, things change every day. I'm grateful for Philanthropy Southeast and all of the partners for hosting this call, and I will quickly walk through a few things. One, if you're looking for frequent updates on how we're responding to any disaster, we actually have special pages for each disaster storm. So for Alaska, Puerto Rico, Florida, and many other places, we are providing a range of different types of support to groups. In Alaska, I think many of you have been aware of the coastal flooding there. What you see is a map here of the areas that have been designated for individual assistance. As you can also see, it's in a very remote part of Alaska. And we know that many of the funders, I know CDP, there's been webinars done about this as well, but we continue to support in Alaska. In Puerto Rico, equally, what you see here is a map of the island, and they're eligible for both individual assistance and public assistance. These are two forms of government funding that are being delivered to disaster survivors and communities that are impacted by disasters. And of course, the purpose and intent of our call today is thinking about the impacts of Hurricane Ian in Florida. And as you can see from this map, there's substantial damage, and all parts of the state have been impacted in some way. And so for people, that's the individual assistance component. We have disaster survivor assistance teams on the ground. We have civil rights advisors on the ground. And a key area and focus for us is to make sure that we're coming alongside all of our non-government partners. So from philanthropy to some of the disaster service, disaster relief groups to the private sector, we recognize that a lot of the services that we provide from the federal government by itself is insufficient. And so working with our states and working with some of our non-government partners, we are working now to identify current critical needs. We're very much in life-saving, life-sustaining operations throughout the state of Florida at this moment, particularly in those places that have been hardest hit by this disaster. But we're also very much focused on how we can begin to think through what are some of the longer-term needs, particularly in those communities that maybe they haven't made the national media yet. They haven't had the opportunity to get in front of the national spotlight, but they're very much suffering through a very difficult time. So I will drop the link to the website that I shared where you can access these maps and other information, and looking forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thank you, Marcus, for those resources. And also just want to acknowledge real quickly Florida Philanthropic Network. And it looks like their president, Ashley, has dropped a link as well for all of our guests here today. And we appreciate Florida Philanthropic Network as a sister PSO in our region and for all the work that they're doing. All right, so Roxy, let's come back to you. So many areas of Florida have been devastated by Ian, but it's not the first hurricane to hit the state. What have we learned from recovery after other hurricanes? What can or should funders be doing at this time?
Thank you, Janine, and thanks to Ashley. We had an FPN call yesterday, so we all were sharing within Florida what we were doing, which was very helpful. And one of the key parts of that were our colleagues across the state who have been through this type of catastrophic devastation, helped all of us. So they're like, unfortunately, we've got a playbook. Let us help you. So that our working together is absolutely critical. Thanks to CDP, we really understand that cycle and we're focused on recovery. What we are doing now is raising funds. All of our colleagues were saying we are raising funds for the intermediate and longer term recovery. We at the Community Foundation of Sarasota County have created the Suncoast Disaster Recovery Fund in partnership with the Patterson Foundation. They seeded this with a $500,000 grant, and they're matching dollar for dollar up to $750,000 for, again, intermediate and longer term relief. Deborah Jacobs, the CEO, a former president of Philanthropy Southeast, is instrumental and a terrific partner. So they stepped up immediately. We got this launched the end of last week, and we're seeing a lot of contributions. So again, we're focused on that recovery, and we know that we can be part of this collaborative effort. We can be a catalyst, we can be a convener, and yes, we're going to be a funder, but that's not the only role that we have the opportunity to play as we work with our fellow funders, our nonprofit partners, our local and our governments. Our faith-based community is absolutely critical in this as well. So we're fortunate. We've been around 43 years and we've got time-tested and trusted relationships. So we're really looking to how do we improve those individuals, those families, and our community so we are resilient. We know that structures and systems and services, as we look at what got so disrupted through this, it is an opportunity in some way for the inequities and injustices that have occurred. We'll have some urgency to address that so we have a more equitable outcome for everybody that's been impacted. We know disproportionately our families and individuals with low incomes, they are the hardest hit. Our seniors on fixed incomes are really challenged. And then our community, if you look at Southwest Florida and into Orlando, we're a hospitality business. That is restaurants and hotels. They're being wiped out. So disproportionately, the workers are often African-American, Latino, undocumented workers. So we're really trying to understand those that are disproportionately impacted that are really vital to our way of life here. We had an affordable housing, and I'm using the word not lightly, crisis. Can you imagine now with all these people that are displaced? So we really understand it's going to take all of us coming together, and how can we come out on the other side of this with these tremendous losses with people at a better place than they were before. So nobody wants a disaster, but can we use it as a way to address some of these inequities and injustices that we know are part of our communities?
Thank you so much for that. Let's come together. And a special thank you to Deborah Jacobs and the Patterson Foundation for their leadership. I think I'm going to go back to you, Sally. So having lived in Houston during Hurricane Harvey, You know that big cities and places tend to often get the most attention and therefore the most money and the most help. How do we also get messaging out about the needs in other places, and what should funders pay attention to?
Right. Thanks so much, Janine, for that question. Well, following Hurricane Harvey, there was a lot of funding that was geographically restricted and designated to Houston and Harris County because that's where the media was and what people saw on the news. And Houston and its residents were very much devastated. But the people of 46 other counties were also tragically affected and did not have equal access to resources to recover. Right now, we're seeing horrifying pictures from specific areas of Florida decimated by Ian, and that damage is terrible. It's horrific. But please keep in mind that Hurricane Ian was a large storm. It affected many counties in Florida and even in other states, South Carolina, North Carolina. And so I encourage funders to consider supporting all the affected areas. Don't geographically restrict your funding if you can help it at all. Listen to the people of the impacted communities and ensure that resources are equitably distributed to those that were affected. Equitably distributed to marginalized communities, as Roxy spoke about. This is an opportunity for us to really highlight the needs of the community that existed beforehand in low attention areas without adequate access to other resources. So make sure that you don't restrict your dollars so much that they can't get to where they are really, really needed.
Thank you so much for that, Sally. Marcus, your section at FEMA works hard to build local partnerships. What kinds of partnerships could funders engage in to increase their response capacity?
I want to go back to something that Roxy had touched on. So of course, as government, we support a lot of organizations in a lot of different ways as well. And many of those non-financial partnerships, the convening power, the accompaniment through process, helping guide people through how to make wise direct actions are critically important. And oftentimes set up the position and when it's time to make those necessary investments in the community, that it's really reaching the best people that are best used. And so from a non-financial perspective, I think many of the funders that may be on the call and many of the community foundations, they're already great at helping think about how do we help build capacity and how do we help support community in a meaningful way that can sustain and allows the people that we are seeking to accompany and how to make change can do that. I think a very practical sense of what that looks like from the federal perspective is we're coming alongside organizations like the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters, the Institute for Diversity and Inclusion in Emergency Management, Catholic Charities. There's a number of organizations we can list, and of course, Center for Disaster Philanthropy as a partner as well. And we are working together to make sure that we're meeting the needs there. When we think about some of the financial investments or things that I've heard from non-government partners, I think one of the investments, and it's on the Center for Disaster Philanthropy page, is thinking about the role of investing in things like long-term recovery groups. These are entities that are often meeting some of the longer-term unmet needs or the things that government by itself isn't able to support. And I think, and I'm sure all of you appreciate this as well, technology has its place. And there's different things that can be done, but where we can find substantial investments in people, because oftentimes it's going to be some of these people that have to spend really long hours managing the requirements of different things happening through government or non-government financial investments. And so we're really focused on and thinking about how do we continue to make sure that we're investing in some of the people that are already leading right now, right? So they may be the neighbor that's been leading the effort to help get people food, or be the person that's helping to lead people through the disaster assistance process. But these are going to be the same people that are going to need some investment to help continue to lead their community through recovery. And so those are some things I would think about as funders are just thinking about next steps. And again, through that partnership with Philanthropy Southeast, CDP, and the many community foundations without Florida, and organizations like the Florida Nonprofit Alliance, I think there's a good set of members to think about how we can make some of that long-term change sustain.
Thank you so much for that. Marcus, I don't know if we want to take this question now, but I do want to remind everyone that questions can be entered into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we're going to be moving to audience Q&A in just a few minutes. Just to note April Adkins' question, how do you find the LTROs? She indicates that in the past with other hurricanes, connecting with LTROs have only been word of mouth for her.
So for the state of Florida, I want to give a shout out to a very dear friend of mine, Christy Rojas. She works for Volunteer Florida on the emergency management side. Her responsibility as part of the state is to be connected to the ecosystem of long-term recovery organizations and long-term recovery groups. And Tanya graciously drop some information as well in the chat to get people connected. And so more than happy to drop the email that Christy has provided for people that want to get connected to LTROs with the state of Florida, and then happy to be a resource alongside CDP as well.
Thank you. Marcus, I think I'm going to stick with you for just another moment. I have one other question for you here. While many people think about the physical debris and destruction, there are also the social and cultural issues that come into consideration. What can you tell us about affected populations that need attention? Just as one example, older adults.
Absolutely. Thankfully, we were lucky enough to be in contact with the state director for AARP right immediately after Ian made landfall in Florida. And we were focused and talking a lot about the unmet needs and the specific needs of older adults, also thinking about children and youth. And I'd say broadly speaking for everyone, just emotional and spiritual care and mental health. It is going to be very important for us as we think about the critical lifelines. So we talk about food and shelter, but we also know medical services are going to be important. So through our Office of Disability Integration and Coordination, we're focused on not just people with disabilities, but folks that due to this disaster have increased access and functional needs. And so where we work with that broader coalition of partners, and I know CDP does nationally as well, to ensure that we're focused on those. But priority populations for us, absolutely. Older adults, we're thinking about children and youth and families, thinking specifically about when we talk about employment, the hospitality industry, the domestic workers, the migrant workers, the people that are working in farmlands. There's a lot of need that's going to be there, but gratefully, and I think we're seeing it in the chat, there's a lot of partnership opportunities. So we want to just make sure that those things are aligned now so we can be of best help over time.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Sally, equity and diverse populations are also important for CDP. When you begin to assess needs for your grant making, what issues do you look at to ensure your grants are equitable?
Well, I think my friends here on the panel have already discussed a lot of what we do and what we consider. And I'm glad to hear that so many others are thinking in the same way as we do. But at CDP, we intentionally focus on mid to long-term recovery because our data tells us that only 6% of philanthropic funding goes to support that phase of disaster, while 51% goes to immediate relief and response areas. That means that typically we don't grant funds until about 3 to 6 months after the event, and our funding is available for the long term. In fact, I still have one remaining Hurricane Harvey grantee more than 5 years after that happened. So this allows us time to really assess the needs, to meet with communities, to engage with our friends on the ground, our community foundation friends on the ground, to know and learn from all of those local funders and other leaders what the long-term needs are. We call this shoe leather philanthropy because I am actually now talking about when am I going to get to Florida, because I'm going to go and meet in community when it's safe and when it's smart and when I'm not a burden, with local nonprofit organizations, with the community, with community leaders, with fellow funders, so that we understand what are the issues that might have existed in affected communities prior to the disaster that will be exacerbated by destruction, like we talked about already, access to affordable housing for marginalized populations, healthcare, access to healthcare, access to mental health care, healthy foods, food deserts, those sorts of things that are particularly devastating to those marginalized populations, those low-income populations prior to a disaster, but are certainly exacerbated in the face of a disaster. whenever possible, we're going to work to find local grassroots organizations that represent those populations and help build their capacity to do the work of recovery, because we know they're committed to that community and its people. And if we can't find a local organization, we will fund a national partner who is also committed to serving those who might not otherwise have access to resources and are then committed to the long term there. So again, long-term recovery, focusing on marginalized populations, listening to and hearing the community and what their needs are and honoring that, and then providing some flexibility and some capacity building for those organizations that are working to help and support recovery.
Thank you so much for that, Sally. I have one more question for you, Roxy, and then I'm just got a question for all of the panelists, and we're going to open it up to the audience in just a moment. So please, I see that Gilberto has put his question in. Please, if you have other questions, add those to the chat. So Roxy, as a community foundation leader, issues of equity and funding locally are always critical. But we have quite a number of philanthropic leaders on the call from all across the country. How can outside funders learn about the needs and issues of an impacted community?
Well, they should call their local community foundation. Truly, we've got over 24, Ashley will get me right here on in Florida. And I have to give a shout out to my colleagues. We on the Southwest Florida coast, we're collaborating, we're all raising money, we're focused on that, but we also know we've got to work together. My colleague Kirsten Russell, our VP of Community Impact, is on the call. She's been instrumental, but truly we are embedded in our community. And as we look at the intermediate and long term, we are committed to being transparent, to being inclusive. And we also are going to walk with our community partners. We have questions, we don't come with the answers. They know the answers. So I think it's really fundamental of anyone partnering with community foundations. At our essence, we're of community and for community. And we really got to walk the talk or talk the walk, but we just know it's critical that our nonprofit partners, our faith-based community, and ultimately those that are impacted, they have to be part of the solutions, the conversation. So I don't think we can underscore that. And those of us that are local really do have we have our pulse. We know the pulse of our community. So I think that's really critical. And we want to make sure we're welcoming and we're seeking out those to walk with us if we haven't in the past too. So we're going to be learning through all this as well. Janine, I may, you didn't ask this question, but I did want to share. Here's an example of other sectors that are just immediately coming to the surface here. The Sarasota Orchestra and our Performing Arts Hall, the Van Wezel, they have put together a concert. All proceeds are going to the Suncoast Disaster Recovery Fund for this Friday. And they will be having an opportunity for people to come together, but people want to unify and come together and be supported. So I'm just sharing how the arts can be part of this as well, and a vibrant arts community as well. So there are examples like that that are happening that we can't lose sight of. Our Sarasota Art Museum is opening their doors. They have internet, free soup. They're taking donations. So it really is. Let's not forget, everyone, they understand people are hurting and they want to do something. So I just wanted to share that example, as those examples as well.
That's a beautiful example. Thank you for that, Roxy. So before we move to the Q&A, and I see that we do have a few questions that are coming in, I do want to pose one final question for the three of you. So what is your overall takeaway message for funders on the call today? And how can they best support the affected people and communities? Sally, let's start with you.
Well, I would say give money, not stuff, unless you are working with an organization prepared for and in need of that stuff. And please, please remember that recovery takes a long time. Don't, as a funder, don't respond to the forces that tell you to get money out the door now. because there are people in these communities that are going to need our help way beyond when the media attention turns elsewhere. So provide flexible, long-term recovery funding as locally as possible.
Thank you. Why don't we go to you, Marcus?
Sally covered a good bit of it. I'll go to some advice and some things that my colleague April Wood, President and CEO of National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters, are thinking about. I think we need to continue to be wise in just the larger story that many of our survivors are in. We know that people are dealing with increased food costs and increased just needs just based on the economic situation. And so as funders, I think a lot of the things that you were probably thinking about before Hurricane Ian made landfall, they've just been exacerbated. So we want people to do the things that they do best and to make sure that their funding follows that need as well. Somebody asked me a question about pets. If that is the thing that you like to invest in, there are a number of organizations that are very much invested in that. So I think, we talk about Mr. Rogers and you have to talk about finding the helpers. The other thing I want to encourage is that the funding and the things that you already do well are going to be that much more important during this time. So just continue to stay focused on what the needs are and where we can, making sure that we invest in some of that infrastructure that Sally Ray talked about for organizations leading long-term recovery work.
Thank you, Marcus. And finally, Roxy, to you.
Well, I echo what my colleagues Sally and Marcus have said. Funding is really critical, but also know that your local community foundations, all of us on the swath that have been hit hard here in Southwest Florida and through the middle of the state, that we truly have these trusted relationships and that we're going to walk with people in our communities as we rebuild. And we're going to look at systems and structures and all those critical points that we do have an opportunity to do. But I'm not going to underscore reaching out to someone and you know what, I care about you. I have been trying to just reach out to people, and we had somebody bring us a suitcase filled with candy and food and whatever, just saying, you at a community foundation are working hard. And I'm like, well, we don't really need this, but you know what? Just even those, thinking about Mr. Rogers, neighbors helping neighbors. We can't forget how important just reaching out to people. I've been calling a few folks. Are you okay? Did you get through this? So we're continuing to bring that personal touch as well as the systemic strategic approach to this. We need that empathetic listening now more than ever to care for each other.
Thank you all so much. What you've shared today with your experiences, with your expertise, it's really been a gift for everyone on the call. I just want to close by saying, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sally in just a moment, on behalf of the board of trustees, the staff, and the members across the 11 states of the Southeastern region, as well as the U.S. Virgin Islands, and our sister program, Florida Philanthropic Network. We're sending our love and our prayers to everyone who's been affected by this incredibly devastating hurricane. And it's been a privilege to serve as your moderator today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janine. And we're going to now move to our question and answer portion. As a reminder, this webinar is aimed to provide education for the philanthropic community. So while all are welcome to pose a question, we'll focus on those addressing funder issues first. And as a reminder, please put them in the Q&A box. It's hard for us to look through the entire chat to find all the questions that are being asked there. We've tried to answer them as we've gone along, but if you could put your questions in the Q&A box, it's easier for us to find them there. And I'm going to start first. Deb asked us, is there a current matrix available of funders in terms of which ones support immediate, intermediate, and longer term needs in recovery? We have our State of Disaster Philanthropy report that we do every year. And with that is included a map where you can search. I'm going to ask my friend Tanya to put that link in the chat box where you can search funders that are interested in specific geographic areas, by issue area, by phase of a disaster, and that sort of thing. So please, do look at that and see if there's a way for you to find, and that's a good source for you to look at for people that are interested in specific areas. I think we've already answered the question about our top advice. We all pretty much were clear on that one, I think. But I am curious. We've seen through the pandemic a huge increase in mutual aid groups and mutual aid support, and the critical need of that in the face of crises and disasters. So Roxy, I'd pose this to you first, and then Marcus, if you want to follow up. How do mutual aid groups factor into the recovery process and even in your funding choices?
Well, we certainly want to work with mutual aid groups, and they're absolutely critical. And also on the fundraising piece, we are so committed to being accessible to all to support, and whether it's $5 or 500,000, it matters. And I want to stress that point, because you hear the term, how do you democratize philanthropy? And as a community foundation, we've really tried to do that. But we are partnering with our mutual aid organizations as well. And United Way has been a great supporter as well, who we're partnering with too.
So Marcus, I'd love your input on the value of mutual aid groups and how they can be supportive.
So building on that, and I actually had a conversation with Rachel Small at United Way Worldwide shortly after the Jackson water crisis. And one of the things we were talking about is just the value and importance of making sure that the mutual aid ecosystem is supported, because of course they are the ones meeting those very immediate needs. But it's great to hear, Roxy, right? Community foundations already engaged with many of those groups. Something that we're thinking about from the emergency management system perspective is a lot of the people that are leading these mutual aid groups, right? We're right at about that time where some of those folks that have been responding from day one are getting ready to tap out. Not because they don't want to, but just it's too much. And so we want to make sure that we're coming alongside our community foundation partners and other partners to help build some support around those mutual aid organizations. And from FEMA's perspective, making sure that we are taking the insights that they can provide, because it's going to be the mutual aid group that's serving in Dunbar, for example, the Dunbar neighborhood, that's going to help inform and influence how we provide additional services in that community, or some of the other islands and places that have been impacted by the storm.
Marcus, I want to stay with you first on this one. Beyond Catholic Charities, can you speak more to faith-based partners that are serving as intermediaries for state and local needs?
How much time do we have? Enough time for a sermon?
Marcus.
So as we approach the solemn high holiday of Yom Kippur, there's a number of Jewish organizations, of course, that have been impacted. We have organizations like Nechama, Agudat Israel of America, the Jewish Federation of North America. We have Mosque, Islamic Relief USA, Islamic Circle of North America. For the Buddhist Uchi, Salvation Army, Southern Baptist. We have Hindu organizations. The United Sikhs are involved in disaster relief. The national voluntary organizations active in disasters, their national membership is about 70 plus national members. More than 40%, I may not get the word, I know it's more than 40%, actually identify as faith-based, but we know that there's a number of national groups and international organizations as well. And so we do take a multi-faith approach, but from our center, that neighborhood partnerships, we also take a multi-sector approach with how we engage groups. But there are a number of organizations already on the ground. And actually, as we're meeting here today as funders, the Florida VOAD is convening a group of multi-faith and multi-sector leaders at the moment as well, trying to coordinate across all of the different organizations that are serving in communities to make sure that they're not duplicating efforts, and that they continue to reaffirm their 4 C's of communication, coordination, collaboration, and cooperation.
Do you have anything to add on that, Roxy? Or
well said.
Yeah, I would just say that our faith-based partners are extremely important and provide, play an integral role in recovery from disasters. We may have kind of addressed this, but we've all experienced disasters before and have been there, done that a little bit. Where are the funding gaps that we typically see in disasters like this? Roxy, let's start with you.
Well, I think we can't reiterate and you had the stats, Sally, on it's that intermediate and longer term funding. And it also is working on capacity building for these organizations. Think about it. They do a budget like we do. Now they're going to be inundated. That's going to be shot to who knows what. So with a huge increase. So even understanding those dynamics of their own resources, to me, that is one thing we really want to be in touch with our partners. We're reaching out to over 100 local nonprofits and really trying to understand that, because if you have skyrocketing need, you've got your current staffing, you're limited now with our own employees with the issues they're dealing with. So I think it's really important that we are looking at not only, and we don't want to be so restrictive in our funding. We learned during COVID, unrestricted, not a lot of strings. However, let's really be thoughtful on, let's give these organizations a way to come out of this stronger with their own capacity and recognize what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. I'm thinking about our mental health. And with childcare, all of that is really going to be stressed beyond perhaps their current staffing capacity. So how can we help address those needs too?
Marcus, do you have more to add there?
So I'll add some people that are going to be showing up in Florida pretty soon. And Sally, I know you're familiar with these folks as well. So during the disaster, there is a phase where FEMA has what they call Federal Disaster Recovery Officers. These are essentially some of the leaders within FEMA that have, I forget the formal title, but our friend Denise Gillum was one of the first philanthropic advisors. But one of the things that when we think about funding gaps, and this is something I want to offer to folks, I think one of the hardest things to figure out is what is government going to fund long term? And I'm thinking about all of government, and then where can other partners bring in the gaps? The FEMA has developed a roadmap to federal resources for disaster recovery. This is a constantly iterated document that curates across all of our agencies, the different types of funding that may be available through recovery. In addition to the great research and work that Center for Disaster Philanthropy does, I think that resource may also be helpful to help some of the funders think, particularly those larger funders that are looking a few months and years down the line. Where are some other questions that we can be asking as thought partners so that when things come up, we're taking full advantage of leveraging these resources against other investments? So.
Marcus, I'm so glad you said that, because that is a quandary. We don't want to fund things if government is funding them. So what are they doing? What are we doing? And we're kind of all been thrown into it now. So that what you're describing is very helpful for us here, because we are questioning that. We also know Spanish language is important. We have an Afghan and Ukrainian refugees here. So we're also thinking about language barriers that can be a challenge. So adding that as well on how do we reach those that are in such need now.
I might add that one of the areas that we often see a roadblock or a little stagnation is in disaster case management. And case managers, oftentimes there's federal funding for that comes along eventually, but having good quality case managers ready to go and working within that long-term recovery process is critical to making sure that people get the resources and have access to the resources that are available to them. And if they can't access one, they might be able to access another. So that's an area that we often see gaps in and that we often try to fund as well. I'm sorry that we are now out of time. That's all the time we have for questions today. You can find many resources, as have been listed in the chat and in other places, on the Center for Disaster Philanthropy's page. We noted that the Michigan Council of Foundations and the Council on Foundations both have access to lots of resources. FEMA, I've been to their website many times, several times just today, because there's tremendous amount of resources out there for you to understand what's going on. CDP is hosting another webinar next week, October 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, looking at mobile homes and disaster and understanding the risks and the opportunities for both of those. Thank you to Philanthropy Southeast for hosting this webinar. Thank you so much. And the Florida Philanthropic Network for your support here as well. Roxy, please know that our hearts are with you and all the people affected by Ian. Stay safe. Marcus, always great to talk with you. You're a tremendous wealth of information and a great compassionate voice and face to see today. If you have questions or thoughts that were not addressed during today's webinar, you may email them to Tanya, my colleague Tanya, at tanya.gulliver-garcia@disasterphilanthropy.org. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Best of luck to everyone. And please know that our thoughts are with you in Florida and the other states affected. Thank you.